Hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Super happy that you all are here joining us. My name is Shelly Taniguchi. I am a Senior Global Partnerships Manager at Team Liquid. My handle is Hot Yoda. There is a fun story about that, but I would have to save that for another time. But I'm excited to be here for a fireside chat with Snow White from Alienware and Dell Technologies. Snow, welcome. Thank you again so much for being here. Super excited. Dell and Alienware have been great partners with Team Liquid for a long time, and certainly in the celebration and also just the awareness around pride and making sure that the community feels included, especially in the areas of technology and esports and creativity and why that's so important in our world. Really appreciate you and Dell and Alienware for joining us today. So welcome.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, we've known each other for more than a heartbeat, but I am excited that you get to introduce yourself to the audience here. But first of all, I know that I got to get the elephant out of the room because everyone, even when I first met you, I was like, really? Is her real name Snow White? So is it?
It really is. It really is. There is a story, just like as your Twitter handle. There is a story behind it. There was lots of stories, and I'm not sure which one to believe. But my parents, we do know they had a sense of humor, and their last name was White, and they put Snow in front of it. So I became Snow White, and so now my Twitter handle is Snow White at Dell. Makes it very easy.
Oh, absolutely. And I gotta love your chair in the background. Again, it's very Snow White-esque, so it's suited for you for sure.
I love it. Yes, it is a great one to sit in and do these kind of sessions in with the background.
Yeah. Well, I want to just jump right in. I know our time
Yeah.
is limited, so tell us a little bit about your current role at Dell, and also your backstory, just to get people introduced to you.
Sure. So my role at Dell is I am a senior education strategist for K-12. And so really my goal is I do a lot of listening to school districts, listening to what's their visions and aspirations for teaching and learning. So more on the teaching and learning side. And our conversations go in a variety of different directions, just depending on what is their priority at that time. So it's a lot of fun listening to what they're doing, what goals do they have for their students, what goals do they have for teachers, their educational leadership teams, and even parents and community. And so, what I do is help connect them with other school districts that might be doing something similar or providing best practices for them to put some programs in place or what some practices that they could implement that would get them to their goal. And so that's what I do. I've been at Dell as of next week. It will be 18 years and which is ironic because I thought when I first joined, I was going to be around for like 5 years.
Yeah.
Before I joined Dell, I got my degree in teaching at University of Texas Austin. Go Horns!
Woohoo.
And so I was ready to be a teacher in the public education system, but I
Mm,
really saw that technology was not being used to engage students at the time, and found a company that was actually using technology to teach problem-based learning. It was very real world for the students, even when they were age 3 and they're learning about spreadsheets. They made it real world, and I was like, I really feel like that's the way technology should be used for instruction. So started working for them. Really loved the company, and after 2 years, the current owner was like, I think this is not something I want to do anymore. So I ended up buying the company from her, and we started moving into schools and doing something similar. And yeah, I did that for 9 years before I joined Dell to do something similar at Dell. And so that's how I got my start.
oh my gosh, but it sounds like your passion again for learning, teaching, using technology as a way to really include and enhance people and enhance the growth of someone as an individual has been a real passion point for you.
Absolutely. It is we just see how it really broadens the horizons for students and
Yeah.
something that personalizes the learning and with especially during this last time, with us being shut down and being virtual, having the ability and the opportunity for students to have learning personalized was just something that I think that will change education for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you've got a couple of young ones, a young daughter who's also been getting into gaming. I wanted you to ask if you can share a little bit about her experience, and for certainly for you as an educator, as a parent, as someone who works for a company who, is not only in the technology space, but also really cares about diversity and inclusion. I mean, what has your daughter's experience kind of, how has that kind of impacted or shared, the lens that you come from?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been talking about esports for a while and the benefits that I'm seeing in schools with esports. And 70% of students already identify themselves as gamers. There's so many opportunities for a career in college and giving them pathways to thinking through that in the future. But
Hmm.
I really hit home when my daughter wanted to game, and it really came in during the lockdown when I saw that this is something she wanted to do. I had a lot of hesitancy with it because, as parents, we all worry about our kids being on more screens. And I thought, oh, this is going to even increase the time on being on screens. But I also knew that she needed to socialize with her friends. And so I did see how these games were allowing her to communicate and feel like a part of a community. And so, she started off with Minecraft. Then she went to Roblox and she was able to talk to her friends there. And then she started going to Fortnite. And what I liked about it, and really having a daughter that was involved with it, gave me a completely different perspective of the benefits. So I've been talking about benefits to schools for a long time, but then when I saw my daughter actually playing, I was like, wow, this is, forgive the pun, this is a game changer when it comes to thinking about the skill part of gaming. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter your body size, it doesn't matter how tall you are, how fast you might run, what gender you might be, what sexual orientation you might have. It doesn't matter when it comes to skill. There's modification and adaptations for folks that have disabilities. So it really is an amazing space for
yeah,
folks that want to play and communicate and feel like they're in a community with each other. So seeing my daughter explore those areas was really enlightening for me on and gave me a whole new perspective of the benefits that gaming can have.
yeah,
Um, but then, you know, there is a lot of unknown. And I know that she's communicating with folks, and sometimes she may not know some of the folks that she's communicating with. And so there is a piece that as parents we do need to watch or also be concerned with. And as a female, for my daughter, she also experiences the toxicity that we hear in esports.
yeah, yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I
Um,
and I know you're sharing that with me earlier, and that's always, the hard conversations, right? But it also is why we are having like these conversations, these fireside chat conversations, and why it's important for companies like Alienware and Dell Technologies to really create space, right?
mhm.
And the conversations and the senior leadership to listen and also then do something about it. So this segues really nicely into just again the conversation today.
Yeah, it's what I have seen with gaming is it reinforces the that we need to have open conversations about how we feel about ourselves and then also learning from each other. And for gaming, it has opened some conversations that my daughter and I are having about herself, how she feels. If someone does call out if she's a girl, are you a girl? And it's said in a negative way. She's also identified as being queer, and so she's talked about that to me too. And so even though she's exploring with the terminology, she still is feeling comfortable talking about it. And I think that's where Dell does a good job is having spaces where we can have these open, honest conversations. One of those ways is we have over 13 ERGs, and ERG is an employee resource group. This is a group where like minded individuals can come together in a safe space, talk about topics that are important to them. It is open to anyone. So you may be like minded, you may be an ally, you may just want to
Mm.
explore what are some of the topics that are important for that ERG. And so I really think any workspace that someone might be in, it's important that these groups are set up so that one, you do have a space that you can go and visit and learn from each other and network. But then also we have to also make sure that we're listening to others too. And I think these are great opportunities for us to listen to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And give me an example because I know not all companies have resources like this. So it's really impressive and great that Dell and Alienware does have that. But can you give me like examples of why it's important to the company? Like why do they set up groups like this, and what are some of the examples of, I think, programs that you've put in place that
Mhm.
really have come from the ideas that these groups have and brought up.
Yeah, it's the reason it's important is that all of us have different perspectives. We're coming from different viewpoints. And just as we listen to our customers when we're making products and we're looking at, okay, well, how should we design this laptop to be better for education? Or how should we design this desktop to be better for gamers? We do a lot of listening to our customers. Well, we also have to do that with the workforce too, and to make sure that we are creating inclusive environments where everyone feels like they could be a part of a community and feel welcomed.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is if we have these types of groups like ERGs where we can have these listening sessions. One example is that when we did have the lockdown and COVID, you know, um, required all of us to stay at home, and our students were staying at home, and we had this virtual learning, a lot of females felt another burden added to them. And we saw this really mass exodus of women leaving the workforce. And Dell
Mhm.
quickly saw that and said, okay, we need to set up listening sessions and say, what do you need as females that are working at Dell? What do you need? What can we do to support you now that your working environment is completely different than it was, 2 months ago? And so, they were able to take our suggestions where we were coming from and implement support structures to help us get through this, because they did see that having diverse perspectives actually creates a better working environment. We want to be at work, we want to work with others. And when you have that kind of um, attitudes within the workforce, you're just going to create a better work field for yourself.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm glad. And it is true. Like COVID certainly has hit all of us very differently, and all the things that we took for granted, and even just our normal us- outlets, right? Of hanging out with friends or doing outdoor activities for a while got really, really stifled. So certainly that level of open communication and support is so important. It's really important.
It really is. And I'm not saying, I mean, we have done incredible things at Dell, but we also know that we can always improve. And we're
Yeah.
and we're looking for ways, and we're opening those areas, saying what else can we do? And something that came up was, looking at our leadership, and do we have more males than females, or is our workforce diversified? And so something that Dell put in place was our moonshot goals. And so
Hmm.
by 2030, we want to make sure that when we look at our global workforce, that 50% will be women and 40% of them will actually be leaders. And
Yeah.
so it's more than just hiring women or a diversified field, but what kind of positions do they have? And so that is an area too that Dell is looking at when we look at, okay, what are our goals moving forward? What do we start? What are we going to aspire to? That is something that they're looking at. And then the same thing with our diversified, as far as 25% of our U.S. workforce and leaders will be African American, and are Hispanic or Latino. So it's really looking at everyone who is um, working at Dell and getting their perspectives and making sure we all feel like our voices are equal to each other.
It's important and exciting to hear. I remember when I first started working with Team Liquid and Alienware and Dell, I was very much blown away by just being in a room or in a virtual room in a meeting and seeing and knowing that there are so much more. Uh, there's a gender representation that is greater than what I normally walk into a room, and I'm only amongst, the only woman and only Asian woman among men, right? So
Yeah.
it was really, really exciting to see.
Yeah. I think one thing that we can think about too is not only listening, but being empathetic. Sometimes
Yeah,
we walk into rooms and into a conversation thinking we're right. Our
yeah,
viewpoint is the right way. And some of these conversations are tough. I wouldn't, we've had even conversations within our team and thinking about how can we do better. And you feel like, no, we're doing great things already. And we have to keep reminding ourselves we can always do better, and listening and being empathetic to others that may have different views, I think will make us better, and
yeah.
and understanding where they're coming from.
And I talked about this before this chat, where the importance of having kind of difficult conversations, right? I know that you had shared with me you have a friend who went through a transition. And just again, knowing how to support, knowing what pronouns to use during that transition, right? Like all of those were just, there's always going to be some stumbling, right? But
Yes.
the whole purpose is let's have the conversation. And so I'm wondering if you might share, a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's always say, you know, it's okay to make mistakes as long as we're learning how to be better. And terminology is something that we're going to stumble on as terminology changes. I talked about my daughter saying, she was identifying as queer, but she's still working through the terminology of what is queer. And she had a friend that's also identifying as male, and just kind of working through, well, what does that mean, if her biologically she was not born as male. And so as we have conversations, I think it's important for us to ask, what is the right terminology that we should be using that would make you feel comfortable. And fortunately, that friend that you're referring to, um, he is very open about his story and understanding that we may not get everything right, and but that's okay as long as we start learning from each other. And so I think it's just trying, and doing the best we can. The more important thing is, are you having that open and honest communication and
Yeah.
and conversations? And so I think it's great that Dell did support him as he made his transition and put those support structures in place. And with our LGBTQ ERG, there is a community that he's able to go to and share his story, and hopefully, others may be inspired to share their stories. And
Yeah.
so again, I go back to those ERGs. We have one for women, veterans, African American. There's so many ERGs that we can find a place, and you can belong to several of them, and have those communications and conversations.
Right. I remember you saying that it's open and welcome to everyone, and it's important to be an ally as much as also self-identifying too. So that's great.
Yeah, I mean, that's Shelley, that's a great point. Being an ally, when I was talking to my daughter, and when she gets questioned about, are you a girl? I asked advice. I was on a group and I said, what should she say when they say that? Because right now it's not really bothering her, but after a while, it's going to wear on her. And someone gave the recommendation to just say, I'm an alien, and so she loves that part. She just, when they ask, she said, no, I'm an alien. But I think what is important about that piece is that all the burden should not be on that person to defend themselves, that we also need to be allies. And if we see something, that we stand up for it and be the person that speaks out, says, I don't care what she is. She could be an alien, she could be a robot, whatever it might be, but we also have that, we need to take that on, and be those allies and speak up when we see some kind of injustice happening.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to wrap this and take this back to our to education, and we talk
Yeah.
about uh, gaming technology, esports, right? And especially with your background and working with the schools, right, and the school systems, can you share why you think that in the schools themselves and why certainly the esports programs that are starting, right, not just at the collegiate level, but even in high school or even middle school, why that's been, as you say, a real game changer in the space of inclusivity?
Yeah, it's like I said, I started off with the esports just knowing about the general benefits of, they already identify as gamers. We see it as a college and career pathway.
Mm,
But what's been interesting is we're also starting to see the students feeling like they're a part of a community once esports enters a school. So I have one school district that I work with, and he confided in me that 70% of the students that were part of the esports that wanted to be on the esports team were not engaged with anything else within the school.
that's a
And
pretty high number,
it's a huge,
70%.
yeah,
Yeah,
huge number. So these were kids that he may have lost because we know that there's research that shows that when you're involved with extracurricular activities, that does improve student outcomes. Whenever you do feel like you belong somewhere, you want
mm,
to be there. And so 70%, and then 10% of his gamers were on the spectrum. And so what he was seeing is that by just bringing in esports, he was allowing a population that had not been feeling like they belonged, or maybe felt awkward in situations, and now they felt like this is a place that they could excel. And so it's really done wonders. And that's just one example. I hear this over and over again about how kids that didn't feel like they had a place did feel like they had a place with esports. And not only that, they were becoming friends with social groups that they would have never met with in the past. And
right.
so I love that aspect of it, is that, I go back to this open and honest conversations. Well, this is a better, or this is a great environment for these kids that didn't normally talk to each other. Now they can talk to each other and talk about some of these things that they may not have before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you shared a great story about a college football player who has befriended like or the gaming has brought people together. So again, like those two groups that you would not think would fit and connect on any level, gaming really has done that, which is amazing.
It really has. I mean, it's you look at the traditional sports, and then there's some kids that are like, I'll never be able to play football. I'm not fast enough. I'm not
Mm,
tall enough. I don't want my head hit, for a variety of different reasons. They don't want to play football. But with esports, you can have the tallest and strongest guy sitting next to someone else who, football would not be, their talent. And so it is great to see these communities working together
yeah.
when we bring in esports. So yeah, like I said, there's the career aspect of it, but then just the feelings of community, I think, even outweigh some of these other areas that we originally started with esports in schools.
Do you see in your experience, do you see esports programs starting? I mean, how young do you see programs starting? Like from elementary school, middle school?
We really do. I mean, say, majority are in high school is where I see them
Hmm.
starting. I'm
Hmm.
seeing more and more middle schools start their programs too. But then now, we see elementary, and usually it's like around Minecraft and things like that. But because you do want to look at it as you look at starting esports programs, is like, what is the age limit for some of the games? But
Hmm.
yeah, absolutely. A lot of these skills that we see, like problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, innovation, things that we want to encourage our students to be doing anyway, we see this in being embraced in esports. And so if you can start in elementary and find games that are appropriate, I highly encourage it, because you're going to bring all these great aspects that we want to see, not only to be successful in college, but in career. When we're looking to hire at Dell, we're looking at these type of skills because our world is changing. Whenever
Oh
you're in
yeah.
technology, it's changing so fast. So let's start young, and it's a passion of kids anyway. And so I just feel like let's jump on this passion and then bring in these skills that are so important to them for when they leave the 12th grade.
Yeah, no, it's exciting and it fits perfectly with, liquid hacks and PrideMakers, right? Because again, a lot of people, or maybe there is a misperception, right, that gaming is just it's on its own and it doesn't have those applicable skill sets that you just talked about, where it does require critical thinking, creativity, problem solving, coming together and building something, or strategizing to accomplish a mission, right? There's all of that that's built in naturally to gaming. So it is truly that space that brings in all of the skills that are just like life skills, super necessary for us to have.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. They are skills that we, need to embrace as our world, it was completely was shaken up these last 18 months, and so the word of the 2020 was pivot. We got to pivot, we got to change, and having those skills to be able to problem solve and think critically, like, okay, now what do I do?
Yeah.
Are important. And so, yeah, we see that in schools with esports programs. And yeah, I do see. Yeah, again, we go back to this pun of game changer. Is that not only does it have these important skills like that, even analytics, and you may not even have a job. You may not go into graphic design with esports, but it may have been your start. And so that's
Hmm.
what I like about esports is it gives kids these inspirations that I didn't realize that I could do this after I leave 12th grade, or I could do this in career and be a graphic designer, but for a completely different industry.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and Team Liquid probably has a great examples of, we have very cool graphic designers that are gamers as well. And they one started with graphic design and merged into this industry, and then someone started in esports and it just naturally evolved. So yeah, the career paths are almost endless. But I think it's important to have conversations like this with people like yourself and professionals, so that young people who are certainly watching the stream can understand that there are so many different career opportunities within esports and gaming, that they just have to use a little bit of their imagination, and also start seeing and hearing about it from professionals in the space, that these roles absolutely exist, and,
Mhm.
and get encouraged to pursue it.
Absolutely. And there's scholarships available
Yeah.
for college. So if you think, oh, I can't go to college, I can't afford it, there I think it was 2 years ago, $15 million in scholarships was provided to for college to be a part of esports. And it's not just to be on the team. They need coaches. They need someone to do the statistics. They need AV production. They need someone to look at health and wellness. So there's so many aspects of it that these scholarships can be applied, that you can apply for these scholarships. So yeah, look at, how financial aid is out there for esports. And then same thing for grants that we're seeing in K-12. We see them applying for STEM grants, because when you really think about it, STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and then when you add the A, it becomes STEAM. There's STEAM grants that you can use to implement esports because of how parallel those two areas are. So there's lots of resources available
Mhm.
if you want to start an esports program.
Yeah, and let's unpack STEAM a little bit, or STEM as we call it, because a lot of people go, well, what is that? I know that in past panels that I've been a part of, people talk about, well, they just look at it from, again, the siloed, like very traditional math, traditional science, and they don't see that in STEAM, again, nothing is siloed in life, right? There's so much overlap. But can you help kind of unpack that mystery and why that there's that synergy between STEM, STEAM, and gaming?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's it's yeah, when you hear the word STEM and you're like, oh, I'm not good at math, I'm not good at science. And then when you really look at the real world around you, you do
Mhm.
start seeing how many times you do have to use science or you do have to use math to figure out, to know the answer to that question.
Mhm.
Um, and so what it's doing is the reason we do see STEM academies and STEAM academies is to encourage this, especially in our younger folks that they're all excited about it in middle school. I mean, in elementary, but then as you see in middle school, particularly females start dropping out. And then
Mhm.
also we see African American, Hispanic populations also dropping out. of the STEM fields. And so that's one of the main reasons, is that we need to make sure, as we talked about earlier, we need a diversified workforce. We need to
Hmm.
hear perspectives from everyone as we make progress in technologies and in our world. And so STEM is there to make sure that, we have everyone. We do have that diversified workforce. But when you think about esports and you think about the two, and you start really breaking down the esports industry or world, you'll start seeing where their sciences, technology is obvious, the engineering and the mathematics. So mathematics, I went to go visit a game publisher, and they had all the statistics of what character or what god was being used at what time, and they had all the statistics, so they knew when they needed to buff that character, and or who's logging in where, and from what country. So you have that math piece in there. Engineering, even when we were looking at the graphic designers, they were having to build those real world backgrounds and using the engineering skills to make sure that everything was lifelike, that we weren't making the house way smaller than the actual character,
Right.
so what are those perspectives? So you could start, really, when you start analyzing the esports industry, you start seeing that correlation between the S, the T, the E, the A. Obviously it'd be like graphic design and designing these characters, and then the math for statistics and analytics that we see. But yeah, it is um, a great way to show the exciting side of STEM and STEAM is through esports.
Yeah. And that I know a lot of schools already have a lot of programs and funding and support for. I'm just wondering, in your experience with these schools, and again, the starting an esports program takes certainly resources and talent and instructors and those folks. I mean, where are the biggest barriers to esports programs starting in education?
I think the biggest barrier, honestly, is the view that it's just kids sitting at a computer playing games and
Mm,
not understanding all the benefits that esports can allow, or that brings to the table when you do bring it in esports. So I would say that's the biggest one that we see, that us old fogies making the decisions for our school, and we're like, what? They're just playing games. We're not using tax dollars to play games. But I,
mm,
I encourage folks that are, thinking like this is just video games, is to do what I did, is start watching the players and start talking to them and saying, why do you play this game? What is it that you enjoy about this piece? What are you learning from it? And having those conversations, because I think it will open your eyes to what it can do. Think about recruitment and retention of our students. We have a huge dropout crisis in the United
mm.
States. Could this be a program to keep those kids in school and keeping that passion, that they have a passion for esports, but then it carries over into learning? You just have to show, tie the two together. So I would say that's the biggest barrier. The next one is, the funding piece of it is like, okay, now
Mhm.
we need to look at of how do we afford this. A lot of the K-12s are getting stimulus money and looking at, okay, I would like to use that money for esports, because I do see it bringing the kids back to our schools. A lot are in this virtual world. So, well, maybe I want to stay in virtual learning. And so I've talked to several districts that are going to use that funding to build that program. So I think it's a great time. If it's something that you've been talking about and having conversations, this is an
Mhm.
amazing time, because the funding is there and you can build the program that you want. And it's not just, again, about the team, but it's about making sure you're bringing that academic aspect into it and teaching it as a CTE course, where kids are actually getting CTE credit when they're in high school around esports. Creating a digital portfolio. Dell created an esports learning guide that we provide for free to districts, and it walks them through how they could teach it as a course. And in the end, they have a digital portfolio. So they go to college and say, this is what I did in high school around esports. This is my marketing plan that I created. This is the
Yeah.
wellness plan that I created. Or they could go to career and show, because that's one of the things when I was talking to a game publisher, said, how do you get a job here? And they said, well, computer science, is one, have a degree in computer science, or show us what you know. And so if you have something you
Mm.
can bring to us, then we're like, oh, this is where your skill set is at. And so I thought that was really important that we let our schools know, whether it's in college or high school, is making sure we're equipping the student to document their learnings on the academic side, but also document their learnings that they learned on the social side. I think both of those are extremely important and valuable life skills.
Yeah. Well, you talk about the students, and there are, I'm sure, in the audience today, there's a lot of young, bright entrepreneurs who are either looking to create some change in their own space. Maybe they are wanting to start an esports program at their schools. I mean, what advice would you give to someone who's watching today? What can they do right now, or just very basic things to help get the attention, the support that they need?
Mm-hmm. So, if I was a student right now and I wanted to start that esports program, is, number one, is just start having the conversations and talk
Mhm.
to anyone that will listen. You're going to have some people that say no, and that is life. It's my job all the time. I come up with an idea, they're like, I don't know. And I got to
Mhm.
go back to the drawing board, and I've got to make sure I'm speaking in a language that they understand, that's going to resonate with them. And so, as a student, you may say, I love playing video games. This is why we should have esports. But to an administrator, they have the goal of making sure that there's the academic achievement piece that they're concentrating on, that kids are staying in school. And
Mhm.
so understanding what's important to your audience, I would create a presentation that's going to hit on those points. That will go so much further in getting an esports program. There's one program in South Texas that actually the kids presented to the school board about why they wanted an esports program and what it meant to them as a student
Mm.
in that school. And that's how they started their program, was just presenting to the school board. So that's what I would say, is start with that communication. And then also, there's so many resources out there available to you as what's needed in the program. So, what kind of hardware do you need? What kind of support structures do you need? What do you need to consider as you set
Mhm.
up these esports programs? But I'd say just start the conversation, know your audience, and present as being empathetic to that audience that you're presenting to.
That's great. That's great. Well, all right, folks, if you're watching, I'm hoping that we see some presentations that are going to be happening to your schools or to the groups that you want to make some changes at. So that's great. That's great. Um, I'd want to just kind of open it up, Snow. I know that we've covered so much, but is there anything that you feel is super important that we'd want to share or make sure that this young audience, hears either what Dell and Alienware is doing or what more companies should be doing more of, in order to create again a very inclusive, equitable, right? I know we talked about
Right.
equity versus equality in terms of
Right.
that space.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that's a great point to touch on first, is just having things equal does not do everyone the same justice as equity, and thinking about equity. So there is a lot of people have seen this, the picture of the three kids looking through a fence. There's a fence built, and they want to look at the baseball game going on, and they
Mhm.
each have their own block, the same size block that they're standing on. Well, that's equality, and so everyone has the equal block. But
Mhm.
if you're shorter, you're still not going to be able to see over. And so then when you think about equity, then you're like, okay, well, let's make sure they have the support structures that that specific person needs so that they can see. And so then you'll see the next picture, and it'll be several of the same blocks, but then two stacked on, so the shorter person can actually see over the fence.
Right.
But then it goes into like, but what's justice? And some people have said liberation is like, what do we do to make sure we're removing the obstacles so we don't even have to worry about having those blocks? So you'll
Correct.
see the third
Yes.
one as far as removing the fence. And so, I would look at that as far as when you think about esports, and that how are we making sure that setups are equitable and you're removing the obstacles so that
Mhm.
everyone has a fair chance at playing. And modifications that we're seeing from Able Gamers and Microsoft and organizations like that are really making investments in people with disabilities is how can they make sure that they have the right tools and all obstacles are removed so that they have they're able to play equally with their other teammates. And so that's another aspect that I would think about as you're thinking about the program. you know I would say, as far as the things to think about as far as what we're doing is our ERGs. When you think about your community, they're not set in silos. Is that recently we had celebrations of all of our ERGs, and we brought all of our ERGs together. And I
Mm,
think that's important too, is that we're bringing different like-minded individuals and communities together, so we're all sharing from each other and we're all listening to each other, and we're having those really open, honest, hard conversations,
mhm.
but they need to be had. And that's what I would encourage students to start in their own schools, colleges and high schools and middle schools. But then also as you go to the workplace, is that's something that you demand, is tell me about your employee resource groups.
Yeah,
What are you doing to make sure that equity is being addressed in the workplace? Is that when you start asking those questions, it's going to force employers to address it.
yeah.
So I think that's important that we keep having these conversations, so that everyone feels included and part of a community wherever they may be.
That's great. I'm getting some audience questions, so this is great, Snow. So I'm going to fire away. This,
Yeah.
I think you've covered some of it, but it's interesting because the question is, what are some benefits to implementing esports programs in high schools and colleges that administrators should think about when they're trying to help students? And again, I think this is framed in a way to the entrepreneur, right? To the student groups who are going to have these conversations with their administrators and the school leadership, right? It's
Mhm.
also understanding what's important to the administrator. What are they looking for so that they can really speak to supporting the students?
Yeah. So, again, just know that some of your administrators are going to totally get it and be so supportive of it. And those are going to be your champions. And so you want to make sure that you find your champions and you work with them. You also are going to have the folks that just don't understand. And so that goes back to, okay, well, what is important to them? So
Mhm.
a lot of schools, school districts are, and colleges, the number of people that are attending are important for various reasons, and a lot of it's tied to funding. Um, it is important that we have people coming to our schools or being a part of our school districts and our colleges, because you get more funding the more people that you have. And
Mhm.
if they look at esports as like, oh wow, this is a way to bring kids back to our campuses or back to learning in our environment, then that will increase funding. So that's one of them that will really resonate when you're thinking about it. And then they are also measured on what kind of careers or what kind of colleges are our students going to. Um,
Mm,
and so that's another area, is that how are they preparing students for the real world? And we can see that esports can lead you to a variety of different careers,
yeah.
where a lot of the CTE courses that are there. My father was a CTE, which is career technical education. And so a lot of them were very siloed. Like did this because you wanted to be, an accountant. You went down in this field. You did the business piece of it. You did this in your CTE course, and it would focus on cosmetology. They were
Mm,
very siloed. What's exciting about esports is the multiple facets that it has, and you can go to a variety of different careers just from one type of sport that they're bringing into high school. So I think that's, if I was going to start and thinking about why schools, is the career and college readiness is important to administrators. The
mhm.
funding is important. And another aspect of it is the mental health and wellness that that needs to be addressed as these kids are coming back. We're looking at more and more investments around social emotional learning and
Mhm.
making sure that your esports program is also addressing this. I go back to you. We talked about the toxicity that we see in esports. Is
Yeah.
that we have to start young. We need to start addressing SEL, the toxicity in the lower grades, so that when the kids that are in fifth grade right now, when they get to high school, that toxicity isn't there because we've already been taught at an early age that
Yeah.
this is not acceptable. And this is how we should talk to each other. And this is how we should be allies for each other.
Yeah,
Um,
it's learned behavior for sure. When you start it, if it starts young, it gets anchored in young, then it will carry over. So fully agree.
yep.
Fully agree.
Yeah.
You touched on something that was also interesting, because I also know that this is something that Dell and Alienware does. Like you have a conference for educators and administrators, right, to help them to understand the importance of gaming and esports. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that because it is a question that came up from the audience about seeing what kind of outreach and what programs that Dell and Alienware have at the high school and collegiate level to either support students directly or supporting the administrators to help them to understand that this is important. Like esports is a real thing.
Yeah, we so excited. So we're about to have our second annual esports virtual conference, still virtual right now, but we're making it free to everyone because we are passionate about the benefits that esports has. So our first day is next week, actually on the 24th, and in the Discord I can put a link if anyone's interested in attending. But what the conference is that it's bringing together industry, K-12 administrators, high ed administrators, and professors, also students. We have quite a few students who are joining. And the three main threads that we are addressing is the career and college ready,
Mhm.
the inclusiveness piece of it, and how to encourage that and the benefits around that, and then the mental health and wellness piece of it. So those are our three main threads, and we're so excited to have Team Liquid open up as our keynote. And she's going to be talking about Celissa is going to be talking about her experience, and she was also a former educator, and now she's
Mhm.
a professional gamer. And so I think the aspects of, again, hearing different perspectives and where people are coming from and how they got involved in esports and the why will be so important to bring back to these campuses that are looking at bringing in esports. And so the 2 days are set up for just networking. It is not any kind of sales pitch. It is more like we are in this together and we all want to learn from each other. You're in high ed. I'm in K-12. What should I make sure our students are prepared so that when they go to high ed? You're in high ed, and I'm in industry. What do we need to make sure that our kids in college are prepared for when they go into industry? And so it is a great opportunity for people to ask questions and then also share their knowledge. So we have folks that are newbies that have, like, what is esports? And then we have folks that are professional gamers who are there providing advice, but then also they're listening and hearing from different perspectives. A lot of professional teams that I talk to don't realize how important esports or how popular esports is in K-12. I said, oh yeah, no, it is growing dramatically. And so, we're all learning from each other. So it's just a great opportunity for Dell and Alienware to give this time so that people can learn from each other that are interested in esports.
And these are administrators, these are teachers, right? These are the folks that are actually, what I call like boots on the ground, right? They're the ones that are either starting the programs or trying to advocate to start a program at their school. Correct.
Exactly. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have it is open to anyone that wants to join that's just interested in it, whether you have an esports program or not. But I think it is important that, this whole kind of our discussion today has just been open, honest communication and conversations. And this is just another avenue for folks to do that. And so, yeah, anyone is welcome. And we're actually going to even have a game night. So we know some of our administrators are not sure, like, what happens during a game. And so, we'll have a shoutcaster that, and we actually did this just recently and it was great. We called him a pedagogical shoutcaster. But as the game was going on, he was highlighting the educational benefits that were occurring in the game. And so it was a way to illustrate to administrators why, esports is so critical to these skills that we want to teach. And so we'll have the same thing. And so the kids will be playing the game. They're going to play it, and we're going to stop, allow folks to ask questions like, what just happened? Why did they do this? What do we do if this happens? Just the terminology alone. When I first started in esports, the terminology alone, I was like Googling every time a kid would say something. I was like,
Exactly.
what's that mean? What does that mean? So just even giving folks an opportunity to ask questions during the game, so that when they implement this in their schools, they have a better idea of, what would a game and a tournament look like when they play other schools.
Oh, absolutely. I hope that you record that because I have very similar experiences where I'm like League of Legends, I'm watching it play and I'm like that they're spitting out so many different terminologies. I'm like, what? I don't know. And I can't Wikipedia this or, Wikipedia this fast enough to find
Yeah.
out. But it's
Yeah,
great.
it's
Great.
so
Well,
true. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, but we're excited to have it, and not only our participants learning, we're even learning. And
yeah.
so we build on this and bring it into our programs, and listen to what is important in esports, and what kind of messaging do we need
Yeah.
to make sure we're talking about when we talk to schools. So if you're out there and you're looking at, hey, I want to set up a program, not quite sure what to do or what should be the messaging, this would be a great avenue for you to learn from others on, what did they do to start their program.
Yes. Everyone out there, invite your favorite teacher or administrator, even if they're not dedicated esports, to attend this conference. I think that'll be a great start.
Yeah.
Um, Another great question that came up from the audience, Snow, is, asking about what programs that Dell and Alienware have that actually goes directly to the high school or the college level. So I am familiar with the Dell Virtual Campus, the new campus, like a virtual world that you've started, and there's some educational programs and content, and uh, there are representatives from the colleges that are actually kind of like your ambassadors and such. Can you speak a little bit to that?
To the so the repeat the question. Sorry, Shelley. What was the
Sorry.
original question?
The question was more like wanting to understand what programs that Dell or Alienware have that go into the high schools or the colleges directly.
Okay. So and I'm assuming they're talking about what programs or resources that we
Yes.
have. Okay, just
Yes.
to make, and when I hear the word program, like actual software program, or
Yeah.
what other, yeah, support. So I just wanted to clarify. And if I get this wrong and you're on Discord, just clarify the question and I'll come back and answer it. But yeah, so college and high school has some similarities in where we provide support, but then there's also some differences. The games that are played in college obviously are very different that we have in K-12. So what we do have in place, the first thing is that we have an esports learning, getting started playbook. So that is free. It's on our website, our esports, Dell Esports website, that you can download it, and it walks through, and it's for high ed and college on, who are the stakeholders that I need to make sure that I'm talking to. What technology considerations do I need to think about? What kind of games would be appropriate for the environment that I'm going to have? And so we have that. I mentioned earlier about for K-12, we do have that esports learning guide that is modular and allows you to teach about the esports industry, not just the team, but the industry. And we have a leadership piece, and we have the health and wellness. And then we have professional learning and coaching clinics that we can go on site or virtual and work specifically with that school and say, okay, well, what kind of program is it going to be after school? Is it competitive? Do you want it as a course? And we will customize our time with you so that we can help you build the program that you want. And so, those are some of the popular programs that we offer to schools to get them started, so that they have that. But we have our Alienware facility, training facility, where Team Liquid goes and trains, and so we do have that available once things open up. We were able to do, in the past, we did tours. So if you wanted to see what a pro training facility looks like, I know a lot of people like to see that in action. And then you have the opportunity to talk to the pros and talk to the folks that are there on, why are things set up the certain ways, or what are some of the careers. So there's a variety, but we're constantly growing and expanding the program. So feel free to send us suggestions like, I wish Dell would do this to help us with esports. We 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 want to listen to you, and we take those into considerations as we expand things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think programs like this, like the just through our partnership with you all, we are doing things like this, like PrideMakers and Liquid Hacks and other as you mentioned, yes, once we have the facilities opened up, we had college mixer nights or high school mixers and
Yeah,
just an opportunity for being able to come in live and actually visit the training facility. So we do hope that as the world starts to open up, we'll also be able to open up as well. So
absolutely. And Team Liquid has been wonderful mentors for us too, as esports, and being able to talk to folks like you, Shelly, and understanding your background and where did you come from, and how did you get to Team Liquid, and what are things that we need to consider. So it has been a great relationship between Alienware, Dell Technologies, and Team Liquid in just even sharing our expertise with each other so that we can share that with our customers. And so, like I said, we started off small and we keep growing. And
yeah,
this time next year, the things that we'll learn from each other will have more aspects to the esports program. But it all comes from you all that are listening right now. When you give us the feedback and talk to us about what's important to you, it's important to us so that we make sure we're meeting your needs.
yeah, absolutely. I think we are coming close to our time, so I'm going to see if there's any last minute questions from the audience that I can see coming through that we haven't addressed.
And if there
Let's
are
see.
questions, yeah, that we didn't get to, or that you think of later on, please, go into Discord and throw them in there, and we'll try to address later on. My Twitter handle is Snow White ATDELL, so Snow White at Dell. Feel free to send me a note or send me a message, and happy to address it that way. But I'm just glad that you all are having Pride Makers and allowing us to have this conversation and talk about the benefits of inclusiveness with esports and how important it is as a community, and then as just as a being better people to each other. And so I thank you for having this time.
Snow, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for Dell Technologies and Alienware for also being great partners with us. And again, you kind of said it best. We learn from each other. It's been an amazing partnership for the first 10 years. Let's see what the next 10 brings, and the most important thing at the end of the day is all of you, our fans and our community. I mean, we're listening. It is not a one-way street. There's always that kind of two-way conversation that's happening. And like I said, this is just the beginning. We can only get better from here. Um, and that's what's exciting about just the community that we have. So I think that's it. I don't see any further questions, but as Snow mentioned, if is anything that we didn't answer, please drop that in Discord. We'll try to get those answered to you. But again, everyone, thank you for your time and we appreciate you. So have a
Thank
great
you.
evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you are in the world.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shelly. Thanks, Team Liquid, for doing this.
Thank you.